Last time I spoke to the deep need of the human heart, of the chitta, for placing itself into the vast scheme of things. And as we are beginning that journey, it's really a journey of discovery and a leaving behind of the limited and limiting assumptions of the dying cultural paradigm, which is modernity, by training ourselves to sense into the resonance with the vast body of the earth and allowing our nervous system to perceive where we actually are and to rediscover the realities of being alive as and in a human body, because it seems that we have forgotten. Because somehow, we go into the supermarket and everything seems to grow on the shelf there, and we don't think about it a lot. We have kind of lost the connection to where it's actually all coming from. So, and if we are attempting to connect with this practice, it literally opens up our world into new vistas beyond what we know as consumers and extractors. It's an expansion of perception through a more intuitive and poetic vision of the earth, the cosmos, and life itself. And that has something deeply nourishing for the heart. And I think I've shared it in the past. When I was a little girl, I would sit mesmerized with some books, we had in the family, showing prehistoric humans, sitting in caves and the tools they used, and the images I've shared here previously also in sessions, and it had a very deep resonance in my heart, and I felt a very deep yearning to connect with that intensity of being alive. And then, it took me to study cultural anthropology, and then I became a nun, and, constantly, digging deeper into that yearning of being alive, more fully alive. The earth speaks to us through our bodies, through the aliveness and the vibrancy of the energy body. And, healing containers such as the Aloka Earth Room, they can help, to amplify that experience and enhance the resonance, and through that, support the attunement process of the human body with the vast body of the earth. And the more of us, are attuned, the more of us will be able to embody solutions which cannot be downloaded, through the intellect. But they can only come through the heart and a more poetic, intuitive perception of what it means to be or to have a human body. And in the wisdom like that of the body, in its stubborn will to pursue physical survival, is very, very deep. And it's conditioned into us through a long, long evolutionary time span. And art and ritual can actively fortify these inbuilt animistic sensibilities, which tie us back to a very distant pre-verbal past of our species. The world we once knew and have kind of forgotten. And now, we are in a point in the evolutionary unfolding where we need to reconnect with that deep knowing. In order, to balance out the kind of intellectual and scientific conditioning we have been overemphasizing for the last few hundred years. And animistic in this context simply means reconnecting with a more than human subjectivity. Stepping out of that box of seeing everything which is not human as an object. And this sounds pretty simple, but actually to live that way and to embody that will take generations of people to train themselves in, and we can be the first ones, in the West who volunteering, for reconditioning in this way and taking guidance from our indigenous siblings who have still preserved this way of seeing, this way of looking rather, and then that's what they see. So a ritual is a embodied offering of one's life energy to the necessary paradigm shift we are at the edge of right now. And we can either, turn away in horror and try to deny it, aka, the politics we can, or we must witness these days, or we can just say, okay, I'm willing to work with my fear, I'm willing to work with my stuckness, I'm willing to lean into this. And, using the human body as a communication tool, because the human body is the intermediary between the biosphere and our destructive mind patterns, our destructive paradigm. It's the human body, which can receive information from the vaster body of the biosphere, and then through that the mind patterns, the paradigm will be adjusted over generations. And it's a very repetitive task. It's just like a task like any other skill we have learned in the past, to play an instrument, to drive a car, to learn how to use a computer or whatever it is, to dance. We had to learn it, learn the ABC and then train ourselves and get fluent at it. And then at one point it becomes an effortless expression of who we are. And that's the task, we are noticing is emerging. Because the body is the connection to the proto-human psychic information that evolution has spent millions of years molding to fit the planetary situation. And its dominant characteristics must have been selected for some very good reasons. Deeply conservative patterns of environmental adaptation, which are a treasury of ecological intelligence, we must reconnect to at this time. Because, it can't be orchestrated from the top down. It has to come from the bottom up, which means, reconnecting with deep time acquired intelligence, which is just simply, covered over with all kinds of stuff, which is not broad enough in its embeddedness. And so it needs to, make some space for this much deeper, much more foundational understanding of the realities of having a human body which needs to eat, drink, and breathe simply. It's not particularly sexy maybe, to talk about those things, It's people are much more interested in going to some other planet and build a life there. But I think it's a sane occupation, to concern oneself with those really foundational needs as part of the Noble Eightfold Path, as part of, what is right action, right livelihood, in terms of our responsibility for future generations. And also, to pay back what we have received from our ancestors. And to just try it on, Try it on to reawaken the Earth ally, which is deeply lodged, into our body, that information. And so we can just, find a posture we can sustain for about 45 minutes and doing exactly that, listening to what we belong to with a humility and readiness to be changed by that on a cellular level, really, through connecting with the energy body of the planet, through our own energy body. Because, as I said many times, we're actually sitting inside of the planet, not on top of it. And that's just one perceptual shift, which we need to train in. If you have believed, for 60 years that you are living on the planet, walking around on top of it, that's so deeply embedded. We need to reflect on it regularly for that to make space, for a new way of understanding ourselves, a new way of seeing. First it needs to be a new way of looking, and then through repetition it becomes a new way of seeing. Because we are simply, cells in a much larger body, and we need to listen to what we belong to, because that will guide us. And these days, this is what indigenous teachers tell us. I'm particularly familiar, with the teaching of Akan Lushwala and Pat McCabe and Tiokasin Windhorse, a ghost horse, to mention just a few very, very well-known indigenous teachers these days. And if you're interested on the Aloka Earth Room website, the Sun Aloka website, you can find a page which is called The Earth Our Teacher, and you can find links. Because it would be simply rather grandiose, to insist that we have to figure it out all by ourselves. Because we are cells inside of a vast body. And we don't need to figure it out by ourselves, and we simply couldn't do it anyway. But we need to listen. And that's what our ancestors knew how to do, to listen. And our indigenous siblings, they have kept that memory alive, because it has been always part of their cultural upbringing. And for us, our own forebears, they more and more moved out of that way of perceiving over the last few hundred years only, though. So it's still pretty close. That ancestral memory. Which is accumulated over a very long time, where our ancestors survived very extreme events like ice ages, floods, great environmental changes. After the ice age, the ice would melt and there'd be water everywhere, and suddenly huge forests would grow because there was a lot of water, and things completely changed. Complete different situation, and sometimes all of the forests would just go away because there was some other changes, and then the way how to survive in that environment needed to drastically change. And how did they survive? Because they haven't been going to university or college, but they knew how to receive instructions with their bodies. And their bodies were like antennas for those instructions. And our bodies can do that too. We just forgot it, and it sounds a little bit woo-woo to us. But then, when I listen to indigenous teachers and they speak about that with such confidence, I feel encouraged to try. And I have been trying. And, really saw it for myself that this is really working. In particular, in combination with the Buddha's teaching, which tells us simply the same message, what we can't sense or feel, we need to overthink, and then we can get hijacked, into a virtual reality, which has very little to do with the reality of being alive in a human body. And it's kind of getting dangerous, really. Not only, as an entertainment, but also as a attempt to solve issues, And like a lot of them making the issues just more intense, because solutions from a disconnected place don't gain any traction. So really starting with the simplicity of having a body or being a body, and noticing that we have arms and legs, how we are designed to survive, designed to move around, to find things or run away from things. And, a body which can move around in order to find or run away has like a certain strength and certain weaknesses. The intelligence is developed in a very particular way, compared with a tree, for example, who can't run around looking for something. It has to make it work in place. So that's a very basic recognition. And what that sets off, in terms of a trajectory of evolution. And then the breathing process, in which we can use to regulate and create a bit of space around experience. If you remember, so that's the basic equipment for the human experience. And then there's so many systems, working inside of our body to keep us connected with the vaster system of the body of the biosphere. Taking things in and moving them around and then discharging. Most of it completely automatic. It's nothing, we don't need to think about it or do anything about it until we, sometimes get sick when that doesn't really continue to work very well. The digestive system, moving a food in the mouth, or sometimes people get food also in different ways if they're sick, and then it goes down in the stomach and it's gonna be metabolized and distributed. And using our hands to prepare the food and bring it to the mouth if we can. And the circulatory system, the bloodstream, which is pumping the blood throughout the body. The heart is the powerful muscle who's taking care of that. And the endocrine system, the hormone system, very, very sophisticated. The skeletal system, which holds up the body so it can move and get to things and get away from things. Without a skeleton, it would be like a heap of flesh on the ground, not being able to do anything. And some of the bones we can see, the teeth are the tips of the bones, allowing us to chew the food so it can be metabolized. And the fluid systems throughout the body, keeping the body moist. And the nervous system, allowing the body to be able to sense. On top of smelling and seeing and hearing and tasting. We can also sense. So different ways of taking in information. the complexity of these biocomputers we call our bodies is incredible. And how, seamless they are embedded in the vaster body of the planet is simply amazing. And very inspiring, actually. It's a true illustration of the concept of emptiness, which the Buddha brought forth as the first teacher who spoke about emptiness and not self. At his time in Iron Age India, there were other teachers who spoke about impermanence and suffering, but the concept of emptiness was a new concept. And then, has been elaborated upon by the different Buddhist schools. And then, I don't know how many years ago, but at the end of the last century, the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, brought that concept of emptiness forward as interbeing. He was one of the first Buddhist teachers who spoke about the environmental emergency, building. And really taking inspiration and a sense of wonder and reverence, by seeing the incredible intelligence of how these systems are seamlessly working together like a huge orchestra without a conductor. Just simply knowing. And, if we really sensitize ourselves to that fact, a sense of reverence and gratitude is an automatic response. We don't need to crank it up. So by, simply witnessing what's already happening every moment, by really stopping and taking that in and looking differently at all of this, is doing the job, actually. Because it opens up the confinement of the old paradigm. Just automatic. It's just a reality check. A much needed reality check. Simply, looking what is moving in us. And then, somehow what becomes apparent is this urge to evolve, to relate more healthily and sanely and humble, to what's already happening. To come off that high horse of knowing everything better. Just because it's expensive or complicated, it's not like better. But asking the question, what is life in us looking for? At this point in history, where there is a lot of difficult obstacles, thrown up. in our way. And they're there, to really stop us from continuing on that deadly trajectory. Deadly, for our species in particular, but also many other species. It's desperate, extracting and ripping out and trying to make it work if even, we know actually it can't work. The project of modernity can't work. There can't be limitless growth on a limited planet. It's just simply not possible. Really learning to trust ourselves that we can sense into this. And, in particular doing it together and, reflecting back to each other that this is what's happening. It's not just like an delusion. Modernity is a delusion. And what's going on in the culture is like maybe the story of the emperor's new clothes, That's what is really happening. And we need these pockets of sanity, to help each other to trust ourselves, to trust what we sense, to trust what we feel. That's what we need to help each other by showing up in this way. And trusting what we perceive that life wants us to know and embody at this time. A time of change, where an old paradigm is dying and a new paradigm is being born. And more of us starting to sense that information coming in from the vast body of the earth into our individual bodies, and asking us to adapt. And then embody it in our lives. And and walking that question, how to best embody. And if we, stay with that, with the not knowing, it will turn into some kind of creative, intuitive expression. That's how it works. But it needs this gestation phase. So, to be able to hold steady with the pressure and not trying to get rid of it or deny it or turn away from it, but just receiving it with a lot of interest, curiosity, courage, and say, yes, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? And then it takes some time, and then it slowly becomes clear. And that brings up fear, I know myself very well about that fear. So then I need a circle of friends who I can call on if I'm triggered, and some other practices which can help me when I'm triggered. Because the thinking mind can't be the leader of that communication between the body of the earth and myself. Because earth talks to earth. And we need to listen with the earth body. And water talks to water. And fire talks to fire. And wind talks to wind. And space talks to space. It doesn't speak to the head. But the body is the organ of listening for that kind of information. And we can feel it when we are on track. And we can pray, for guidance, to kind of ritually, intentionally prepare ourselves as a receptacle, internally and externally. We can do things which can help us to stay on course, to bear with the not knowing. And each of us, have a little piece of the instructions. Everybody has different piece, different gifts, different medicine to bring. And then between us, the new paradigm emerges. And what we need to do is to stay connected and create these pockets of sanity together, which can connect with other pockets, and so it gains strength. And all of us who can, sense that vibrancy, the aliveness, not giving into the fear and not giving into the hopelessness, but, coming back again and again to recognize that aliveness. That's how we receive the instructions. It's not intelligible through the brain, the intellect. But the guidance comes through the aliveness. We are rewired in that way. And it's not a head job. And sometimes we feel very connected, and sometimes there's other things going on, and we are, tight and feel disconnected, and then we connect with that feeling of being disconnected, because that's also part of how we can feel. So it also belongs. Nothing wrong with it. It's just unpleasant. And I have a quote by Akan Lushwala. And he says, the healing of the world will be created through the cooperation of everyone who lives on Earth. The Earth knows how to heal the Earth better than anyone else. Remembering to listen to all beings of nature that are not only asking for help, but also offering their wise medicine, will be the long-awaited end of human supremacy. And it takes the time it takes. And the more we can align ourselves with it, the more fulfilling our life will be. Because we are fulfilling what it means to be human at this time. I'm gonna stop now talking and we can sit, and then we have another 15 minutes, and at one point I'm gonna introduce a beautiful song which I have an audio from, and which is really, I think, uplifting the heart and the mind and creating space in the system, so more reality can land in us.
You don't have to know the way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way, trust the way, feel your way. The way knows, the way knows, the way knows the way. You don't have to know. Plan the way, trust the way.
So that, Kate, did you hear this song? That was a song by Lyndsey Scott, and you can find it on YouTube easily. And sensing the spaciousness which the beauty of the song creates in the system, the sound. Really stretching us. And at different times in history, different music is emerging because that's what's coming through. Mozart and Lyndsey Scott and different resonances, which are helping to be more fully alive. And expressing what's happening in the moment. As this spaceship Earth is moving through deep time. And we are like part of it for some time, and then we go back into dissolution and emerge again in 100 different ways. And then there are some, really crazy people who think they have to control all of this. And we need to be a counterbalance to that. And to amplify a different way of responding to the crisis. By being willing to be a quote unquote, channel of that aliveness, which always knows how to respond since a very long time. in a minute or so I'm gonna ring the bell.